Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the BESA conference, first day and our first proper session. I'm delighted to be joined today by some real experts in the subject of the water management, launching officially our TR60 water management guide. Shortly, Will Pitt will be giving us a brief presentation. So Will is chair of our technical committee here at the BESA group, and he's also a technical leader at Laing O'Rourke. We have Raymond Pickford here, who's Senior Vice President of Marsh Commercial, who are our insurance partners at BESA Group. Kevin Morrissey, Engineering Manager at Simm, and Paul McSoley is Chartered Engineer with Mace Group. We're hoping to be joined by Adam Clutterbuck as well, who's a partner at Home and Commercial, but he's having some technical difficulties this morning. So once again, thank you very much for joining us. I will hand over to you, Will, and we'll see you again shortly.
Thank you very much indeed, Graeme. Good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for joining us this morning for this short session on introduction to water management plan. So I think without further ado, probably just give a quick background as to why we at BESA started this project on the water management plan. So I think the starting point really was 2 years ago, CEng produced a technical guide entitled Managing Escape of Water Risk on Construction Sites. Now, CEng stands for the Construction Industry or Construction Insurance Risk Engineers Group, and they comprise a group of representatives of major insurers and risk management companies. And this is actually the 5th edition of this guide, but I think it'd be fair to say that most people in the construction sector probably weren't aware of the earlier versions to the extent maybe they should have been. But certainly this 5th version has gained a huge amount of traction throughout the industry. And the reason that they produced this guide was simple, really, because they've seen a massive increase in the reported number of substantial water leaks or major escapes of water, particularly during the construction phase of building projects. And ultimately, this is what the industry, the insurers and everybody is trying to avoid, and that is a major escape of water. Now, it would seem that unfortunately these big escapes of water have a nasty habit of happening, particularly in the period leading up to handover. So if you think of a large commercial building project, whether it be an office building or a laboratory or a data centre, it may well be that you've got the equipment fitted out with furniture and so on. And if you do have a major escape of water, it's very easily going to lead to substantial damages and costs and project delays. So it's no wonder really the insurance industry has hardened. They've taken a hardened stance to the whole issue of water leaks, and quite rightly they're demanding that the construction sector positions itself in such a way that they're able to demonstrate how they're mitigating risk. And one of the key requirements from the CEng document is that they want to see building projects deliver or use water management plans. So BESA TR60, why did this come about? Well, we produced this. It really is a guide for contractors involved in the installation, commissioning and operation of all types of water systems in buildings. It can be used to demonstrate the key requirements to insurers on how risk can be mitigated. Now, importantly, it draws on a lot of the guidance in the CEng piece, but it kind of expands upon that. So if you think of CEng as sort of associated with the whole building project, the TR60 is focusing more specifically on the building services sector. It's not a design guide, but it does provide some good recommendations in terms of good and bad practice. So first of all, it looks at the construction and installation stage, and it provides some guidance and pointers on a whole range of things, including things like design standards, guides and good practice, good management around material storage, something that is always an issue on construction sites and perhaps doesn't have the thought that it should do. Supports and fixings. Again, there's quite a few issues as a result of water escape have actually been traced back to poor or inadequate supports and fixings. So the guide references another recently produced BESA document, which is TR50, the best practice guide to support some fixings, the importance of valve labelling, particularly for isolation and emergency isolation and so on, installation quality, which we'll talk about more because that is absolutely key, controls around fill and pressure testing, temporary isolations, and then cold weather provisions. So, for example, how you're managing construction sites around periods of cold weather or a Christmas shutdown, for argument's sake. There's a section on emergency response, recovery, and adaption. Emergency procedures they should be clearly defined and readily available. Contact details need to be kept up to date and displayed around the construction site. So, for example, out of hours, are there any security guards or any watchmen that need to know where the information is? Incident action list and emergency response flow charts. The TR60 also provides some guidance around management quality and competence. And in fact, I think it probably majors on this section, really. Specifically, it talks about what the water management plan should include. Now, the water management plan should be project specific. It shouldn't be one that you copy and paste from so that you use. It's not a generic document. And that should include things like risk registers, emergency response plans, including drawings. We touched on that a minute ago. On the screen, there's a good example of a drawing that might show you where the key isolations are and all that kind of information. Personnel details, leak detection, shut-off and alarm facilities. Quality management and controls, really, really important. And then it introduces the concept of a water work permit system. Now, a water work permit system is really something that should be used on all live work. So whether that be filling, pressure testing, pre-commission cleaning, or whatever it is along those lines, there should be controls in place to ensure that work is properly controlled and managed throughout. Also, in relation to management quality and competence, there are recommendations around void closure hold points in all quality management systems. Now, certainly on larger projects in our industry, this may already be in place, but it's really considered best practice. And the reason for this is because we want to make sure that pipework systems are visually inspected, that they are proven to be statically complete, that they've been tested. We've gone backwards there. And that the installation is proven to be complete prior to any ceilings going up. So that's really important. It talks about the use of competent contractors. Now, competent is a really, really sort of important word at the moment, particularly going on with the work around the Building Safety Bill. But what does competence look like? Well, at the moment, we've got schemes along that, so you can use the BESA competency scheme, the Chartered Institute of Public Health Engineers, and increasingly we're seeing more clients demand that only WEAPS approved plumbers are used on projects. WEAPS being the Water Industry approved plumber scheme. It's really, really important that operatives' competence and qualifications are checked and evidenced on a project-by-project basis, and also that pipework manufacturers, that their specific training is delivered to all installers on a project-by-project basis, and that is evidenced and retained on site, particularly with the increasing use of modular and different sort of semi-skilled pipework installations. Now, the water management guide finishes off with some example templates that can be used. So there are things like a water management plan template, a risk register, and also a dynamic risk assessment as well. So they're included in the appendices at the back of the document. This is the first time that BESA have produced anything like this before. It is a really, really important subject, and as we'll probably discuss now, it's one of the top agenda items in the insurance industry. So I would advocate, or I'd certainly ask, that any feedback in relation to this document, we would really welcome that, and I potentially see this as something that needs to be updated and revised as the subject develops. So any feedback would be welcomed. Please provide that to technical@thebesa.com. Otherwise, there's a short introduction to the water management plan. I will now hand back to Graeme.
Thank you for that, Will. Excellent summary. And please note the typo in the last slide that I put in at the last minute, and I put TR50 instead of TR60, so apologies for that, everyone. It is TR60. TR50 is a very different document. So welcome back, gents, and welcome, Adam. Thankfully, you've got your technical difficulties out of the way just in time to join us.
Thank you.
I'm going to throw Raymond straight in the deep end. When we are preparing for this, you'd mentioned that water damage claims are now more prevalent than fire claims in terms of frequency and severity, and you'd estimated, I think it was £1.8 million a day in respect to claims from domestic properties, but that excluded commercial and construction sites. Do you have any kind of estimate on the cost or the claims values for commercial and industrial?
Yeah, to be fair, that's actually that is inclusive. What I don't have is the breakdown in that number. So the 1.8 million per day is a total number for escape of water in the insurance industry. And speaking to Aviva ahead of today, being one of the main insurers in the market, 40% of Aviva's claims, total claims paid, relate to water, which is quite phenomenal when you think about all the types of claims that Aviva as an insurance company will be paying out on. They then broken that down just to give you a little bit more of a flavour on it. 33% of that is down to burst or leaking pipes. 23% of it is because of frozen pipes. Sprinkler discharges is included in here, where you take sprinkler discharge into consideration with this report. And then the rest is made up from backing up, so whether it be the drains or the sewers or the appliance failures themselves. So whilst I didn't answer your question directly, hopefully that's given you some useful information.
I mean, just to add to that, Raymond, as well, I mean, as a business, if you look at the leaks that we've had on sites, not going into too much detail, but that kind of fits for that figure, especially with the ones where you talk about the backup risk, which is in the sewer network. That's become probably one of the biggest ones that's going on at the moment. So I expect CEng will probably update some guidance on that in due course in the future.
Yeah. I don't know about everyone else, but I'm not hearing Graeme.
Graeme.
Can you?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
I certainly
Yes.
can, Graeme.
Can. Sorry about that. Not quite sure what happened there. My headphones cut me off. I didn't hear you, so at least thanks for stepping in there, Paul. I was going to mention actually about, because you talked before about the fact that most major flood events are related to storm events, and this connection between, I don't know, the below ground drainage isn't really our remit because that's really the civils on the construction sites, but obviously where our systems have to tie into that.
Yeah.
So where do you think it leaves us then if the issue, if there are issues with the sewage systems and the below ground systems, and we're trying to tie into that, where does that leave us?
I think I'll probably add to it and say that, and it is a civils problem. And I think, as I said there with CEng, there probably will be some more guidance issued. But I think, as engineers and our own respect for our own businesses, I think we've just got to consider the actual connection type that we have. Because what we found is, and not speaking for anything in particular, is that you can have a backflow prevention on the inside of the building. But if the hydraulics externally in the sewer is that bad because of the storm discharge, it's a 1 in 100 event or below, but the storm discharge is that big, it will break that connection. So I think there's a piece to probably be done in due course for the whole industry going forward about how you prevent it externally before it even comes in. Because, if you use good steel systems and they're robustly put together, you can get some very big pressures coming back in from those systems. And I think it's with the intensity we've had probably this year, couple of times we've had a very few big, especially in London, some very big storms that have come in. I think it's something which is particularly new to probably insurers having this problem, and I think we'll probably see more guidance going forward. But it's definitely something that everyone should kind of just consider, even if it is civils. The way we connect to it needs to be a bit more robust.
Thanks for that, Paul. I didn't actually catch any of that because I'm having real difficulties with my headset, but I'm sure you answered really eloquently, and your timing was perfect because I came in just at the end. Right, moving on. Will mentioned about the quality management in as part of the construction process. So why is the quality management system so important during the installation of pipe services? Kevin.
Thanks, Graeme. So I think it's important that at all stages, from the design and selection of materials through to the assessment of competencies of the individuals and their familiarity and training with products that are in use, and then ultimately how they're tested, how they're installed, and how they're made ready to accept water. Because at each of those stages, there is the opportunity for error to occur, and invariably it's those points where error occurs that contributes to the unplanned escape of water, which this publication, this guidance is aimed at addressing. So what we've tried to do through the document and the development of the document and the consultation that we've had is identify guidance at each of those stages. As I mentioned, in terms of selection of materials, and there are other BESA tools that will help installers and designers select those materials, but then how we assess competency. But ultimately, there needs to be some responsibility, some level of accountability taken, and we've identified the need to have a responsible person, a person responsible for assessing the risk, identifying the mitigations, and then implementing those mitigations to prevent and avoid the escape of water, but also with the contingency of emergency plans that Will explained in the earlier presentation.
Yeah, indeed, and fun enough, you mentioned there about accountability and responsibility. So ultimately, then, who should own the plan? Would that be the principal contractor or the MEP contractor? Will?
I think there's no simple answer to that. I think it probably depends on the project. Ultimately, it will be the main contractor that will own that, but a huge amount of that, or certainly a large proportion of it, feeds into the M&E contractor will feed into that. So it may well be that whilst the main contractor has their own one, there certainly should be dialogue and discussion by all parties to make sure that if there is one document that they're fully aligned. Because ultimately it's about ensuring that there's a responsible person and that all that information is to hand in the first place. So not particularly easy one to answer. I think my response would be it's certainly a requirement that M&E contractors have their own one, but they consult with the main contractor, certainly on larger projects, to make sure that it is tied in with theirs, or indeed it sort of dovetails into what they're doing as well.
Yeah,
Graeme,
I would agree. It's not an easy one to answer. Yeah, of course, Kim.
Graeme, can I just come back on that, because I think Will touched on something that's really important there, and it ties in with the comments that Paul made as well, that whilst the M&E trades and the building services contractor has a great part to play and will no doubt be responsible for introducing water into the systems, we've got to make sure that we're doing it at an appropriate time, and through consultation and collaboration with the principal contractor, we'll be able to determine whether the main drainage system is ready to take any escape of water, whether that's planned or unplanned, and ensuring that we're not introducing water into systems that may need draining or may be susceptible to leaks at a time when the rest of the building and the infrastructure and the drainage isn't ready to take either those planned or unplanned escapes of water.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It's a real good point. I mean, and just to probably add on top of that as well, for those that are maybe as geeky as us, that when you look at main contracts that as principal contractors like us sign up to, things like specified peril now no longer contains the escape of water generally. So the all risk insurance that we take out, you've got to have the plan because you won't insure against it.
Mm-hmm. So, given that most of the incidents tend to occur later on in the actual construction process, then, because obviously it's generally happens when you're testing the pipework, where do you think the plan fits in with the CEng underwriters and Raymond? Do you think it's something that they would take on board as being, as driving towards lower premiums?
Well, for us, as I say, for us as a business, if we don't have the plan, and I mean, the way I kind of look at it, and hopefully everyone agrees with this, is that if everyone's following a document which is as good as this, and it's being considered early on by development principal contractors, then when you look at your insurers, they'll look at this and go, you've got a robust way of meeting those requirements already. You will end up with, you should and you will end up with lower premiums if you follow it, because the problem is that if you have the escape of water and you haven't planned for the prevention of it, the insurers won't look at you as good as you've actually planned for it by using a document such as this. So for me, it's an essential that we as a business will follow it, and our trades below us will as well. That's how we'll look at it.
Okay, do you want me to add something?
Yeah.
So please, just to add, just to add to that, just to can give you, I suppose, give you a little bit more comfort. There's a number of insurers that have that endorse this. So big insurance companies, so AIG, Generali, Allianz, Aviva, I referred to earlier, AXA, Travelers, Zurich, and reinsurance companies. So this is something insurers are calling out for, but I'm going to give you a little bit more flavour. The way you buy insurance is constantly evolving, but insurers' approach around due diligence is so much more tighter now, and they will absolutely be wanting to see how you're mitigating risks, and when they're paying out such big claims as an industry on escape of water, and we haven't even touched on flood, which is then another multi-million pound exposure to insurers. This is going to be extremely well received and will help main contractors and contractors in the purchase of ongoing insurance.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, in terms of the development project, then, is this something, Adam, that you've seen as a developer that you've had issues with sites, and do you think this kind of professionalism, I guess, the professionalizing of this part of the construction process is something that you would obviously welcome, I would presume?
Yes, good morning, and sorry to have such trouble signing in. So my life is about 2/3 on claims, water damage being the main peril, some flooding, but a lot of it escape of water. The other third of my time I'm on major construction projects, advising the client and professional team how to avoid water damage. So we all know prevention better than cure. So the guide, as far as I'm concerned, is great, because the escape of water claims are, there's nobody in the business now that doesn't know of a major development that had a serious escape of water that went down through lots of flats. And so people are learning the hard way. On one project that I won't mention, but when there were a series of escape of waters that is affected 3 or 4 flats on different levels, despite having so-called leak detection systems in place. The company responsible for installing very good quality fittings and fixtures, they did say, well, we've had 5 of these incidents, but there are 20,400 fittings, joints in the system, in the building. So it's 0.000 whatever it was. So I think the thing is, from my point of view, is number one is that you can't test and check sufficiently enough. You've got to, all the things the guide says, which is competent people. Are they tested? Are they just people brought in because of labour shortage or something? So all the good housekeeping there. But so that will reduce the number of cases. But I think on a large project, you have to expect there to be an escape of water. If there isn't, great, but you're prepared for it. So you get into mitigation then. And from my point of view, I'm not an engineer on plumbing. I just know buildings and how they're put together and what happens when they get wet and how best to deal with that. So you guys are all technical on how to have the devices in there. There are some very good leak prevention systems now, but I still see insurers choosing the wrong ones. I'm not an engineer, but the engineers that I speak to about the system say, why on earth do they pick that one? It won't switch off for an hour until the water's, been running for an hour or something in a high net worth place or a commercial building, that the damage is enormous. So I look at, apart from choosing the right leak prevention systems and leak detection, which there are a few of them out there and they're getting better, like the guide says, fairly basic things in the design, such as keeping the plasterboard 25 mil off the floor. I've put that on projects, but for whatever reason, it's not done. And it's only when they have the leaks and the floods that they wish they had, because the strip outs are horrendous with all the kitchens and what have you. There's other things that could be done as well, like the insulation that's used under floors. If that's a resilient one, a waterproof one, then the drying process, the mitigation, is much less expensive and disruptive. But often the floors have got to be ripped out because the insulation's got soggy. So perfectly good underfloor heating systems, perfectly good hardwood engineered floors that could be dried in situ have all got to be ripped out with kitchens and bathrooms and tiles because of that lack of forethought in the design or a bit more expense. So it is those other factors, I would say, and the contractors having the mitigation team ready with more than just a few dehumidifiers or a mops and buckets or aquavacs, a proper program in the plan for mitigation as the professional drying people do before they get there. So there's quite a bit that contractors can do to up their game there.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Adam. I mean, that you're looking at the mitigation, but obviously we can also look at preventing it in the first place. And one of the issues that we do have, we are getting very short on time now, but I do want to come back to a more technical issue. We've talked before about surge pressures, and we know that the pressure surge of water coming into new systems can often be the cause of the leak. Will, would you like to explain a little bit more about what surge pressure is and any ways of mitigating that and avoiding that in the first place?
Yeah, no problem, sure. So very, very briefly, surge pressures, they tend to happen more on boosted water systems, so domestic hot and cold water systems. And historically, the problems have been when there have been power cuts, so it may well be during commissioning or when buildings are nearing completion. And if there's, for whatever reason, a power cut to the booster set that is supplying hot and cold water to the building, once that power is reinstated to the booster set, if there are not adequate provisions in place around that, what can happen is that booster set can go from 0 to full pressure instantaneously. And if there's been any form of drainage of water in the pipework whilst the booster was switched off or while there was a power cut, you can get a vacuum occurring in the riser. And when that booster set is re-energized, it hits the vacuum, the pressure inside the pipework can be as high as 50 or 60 bar. And there have been examples of this happening in multi-residential, high-rise commercial buildings, and the pipework fittings have blown at the very top of the risers and caused a monumental escape of water that has then drained all the way down through the building. So there are a number of mitigation features, things like surge arresters, the controls on the booster set, and proper commissioning. So I think these are relatively well known now, but it's about ensuring that best practice is applied on every single project.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a really good point. Thanks very much for that. And I think the key message then is professionalism and competent workforces and robust management, quality management systems in place on the construction site overall, isn't it? So we're out of time, gents. So just to wrap up, thanks very much all of you for joining us again this morning. Sorry I had the technical difficulties early on, but we got there in the end. Just to remind people as well that if you're interested in the water systems on sites, that there is a round table coming up this afternoon at 2:30 on the importance of keeping water systems clean, which you may be interested in. I'll be back at 11:30 on the Mitsubishi Roundtable, Future of Offices, and again in the same theatre for Heat Pumps Net Zero session and the cold chain session. I have a busy day ahead. I hope you gents enjoy the rest of the conference today, and to everyone attending, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.